Hey there, good to have you along to the channel. Thanks again for watching my videos, and we've got something special for you today. Well, we've got another box opening review. I've been out buying a few bits and pieces and got this one from the most local model shop to me, Bolton Model Mart. And actually, whilst I think about it, when I was in there, he still had one of the South Eastern and Chatham Railway H classes from Hornby that I did a box opening and review a little while ago. So I know some of you have been hunting for that locomotive and can't find it. Well, if you give Phil a ring, tell him I sent you. He's got one in his cabinet, so be quick, you might be the one to get it. But without further ado, let's take a look at one of the little goodies here that I got second-hand from his shop. Well, I spotted this a little while back in the second-hand cabinet at a model shop that I go to a reasonable amount. And even though this box looks pretty chewed up, this particular locomotive is one which I really do like. I'm a big fan of these. So it's the R2065A, and this is the ex-Lancashire and Yorkshire Railway Pug, but in LMS livery as number 11250. And I already had the other LMS liveried one that Hornby produced back in the day, at pretty much the same time as this, 11232. So when I saw this at actually quite a reasonable price, I thought, you know what, I'm having that. So it's actually what is quite an old style Hornby box now, even down to the black and white line drawing that sits on top. Now this particular model started its life out as part of the Dapol range, and when it was originally introduced it was just such streets ahead of the competition. It really did create a paradigm shift in the model railway ready to run world. It's now getting a little bit perhaps long in the tooth in certain areas. It still looks very good, but there's still bits that may detract. But we've got it here. Look at this. And it doesn't look, this is actually the first time that I've had it out of the box. So I'll probably turn it over now. Am I going to find that there's problems on the other side? No, that looks all right. So we've got here a little bit dusty. Yeah, that's just dust. It's a lovely little model. In fact, it is a tiny model. These locomotives were originally introduced by the Lancashire and Yorkshire Railway. They shunted places like Goole Docks. They were a product of Horwich Locomotive Works. And some of them were sold out of service by the Lancashire and Yorkshire Railway. Some were then subsequently sold out of service or scrapped by the LMS. So whilst they all retained their numbers with the addition of 40,000 when they passed into BR service, there were a lot of gaps in the range where locomotives had been either scrapped or sold on. And interesting enough, I think number 19, well, Lancashire and Yorkshire Railway number 19, is one of the two that are preserved, but it's actually the one which was sold out of service into industrial use and actually survived by going along that route. The other preserved example is 51218, which I do have a model of, but I've dug out of one of the display cabinets that was to hand, 51222. So this shows the locomotive in the later BR livery. Now Hornby they've produced this in quite a few different versions. If you want the Lancashire and Yorkshire Railway lined version, the only one I've seen of that is actually from Dapol. So I did get myself one of them, and it does actually look quite nice. But in terms of LMS and BR liveries, they've been produced by both Dapol and Hornby. So what we've got here is a fairly simple livery application, as per the full-sized versions. Essentially got LMS on the saddle tanks, the number 11250 printed on the cab side, and then we've got a works plate there, and yeah, the same works plate is on the other side. The model itself, well, I mean, that is tiny. The wheelbase is actually shorter than the wheelbase of pretty much all of the wagons in the ready-to-run ranges of Hornby and Bachmann. So it'll go round some incredibly tight corners, but if you want it to pull anything when it's doing that, well, you might have to slacken up the corners a little bit. The drive on this is from a motor mounted vertically in the cab, and this is one of the detractions. It's a limitation of the design originally in the 1990s of this. Really good for its time, but you can see in there the motor on display, and it's something that I have actually, on one of the other examples that I've got, I've painted up a figure of a driver that's kind of pointing, as if pointing to the road ahead, and he actually covers the side of the motor fairly reasonably. So there are things you can do to disguise that, but certainly it does fill the cab up quite greatly in there. It's also not DCC ready, not in the slightest. So I've seen online you can hard convert these if that's the way you want to go, but be prepared to do a bit of work yourself, and you probably end up with a small decoder stuck to the roof of the cab. They are actually also quite popular as a starting point for conversion to 016.5 locomotives, so you occasionally see the chassis having been reappropriated, which I think is a bit of a shame because they're such a lovely locomotive. We've got a separately applied metal handrail around there. It does look a little bit on the chunky side, but you know, it's not too bad. Separately applied whistle, and we've got this very, very distinctive, almost like a flower pot, a tall flower pot funnel. The buffers, well, they're all dumb buffers. And now those of you who remember the Airfix kit, which did lastly pass into the Dapol range of kits of the ex-Lancashire and Yorkshire Railway Pug, will have noticed that that has proper buffers. Now, as far as I'm aware, I think the dumb buffers are actually accurate for the model, and the real buffers are wrong, and I suspect that they're probably one of the only locomotive classes that retain dumb buffers into BR days. I'm probably going to be shot down in flames now. People going, oh no, that's completely wrong. It's actually the model that's wrong, but hey. The model is of an age where the coupling there we can see, there's no NEM pockets, so we get this fatter style coupling hard screwed on. However, it's not tremendously difficult to replace it, and if I pick up and show my other model there, you can see that it has readily been replaced using some spare couplings that can be bought in packs from Bachmann. So the one on the rear doesn't even need any surgery applying. The one on the front, you just need to trim the ends, and they screw on with the original screws. This particular model, I haven't test run it yet, so it may need a bit of TLC. I don't know how long it's been in the box, but what's interesting is that I believe it has a manufacturing date there of 5th of December 1999, so it really is actually getting on a bit. That's it's quite shocking in a way, but it's also something that I was pointing out to Zoe, that given the vastness of my collection, it's a question I'm sometimes surprised that nobody's ever asked, and that is, where did it all begin? Well, this locomotive is actually where my collection began. This is the first locomotive I ever bought brand new. So you could say that my entire collection of models stems back to this very locomotive, and it's one of the reasons that I have a particular soft spot for the ex-Lancashire and Yorkshire Railway Pug. The other thing is it's just a beautiful, cute little model. Other things to note, well, the wheels, I really like the wheels. They've got the correct pattern of the inners. They're done as a plastic insert, but I really think that they capture the spirit of the locomotive really, really well. And they're presented, along with the coupling rods, chemically blackened on all of the Hornby issues, although if you get the earlier Dapol ones, these are actually quite gleaming in silver and do stick out like a sore thumb and benefit greatly from being chemically blackened. The cross slides there, they're covered with a cover, and I don't think that that is particularly prototypical, certainly not for the vast majority of the class. But underneath there is a rendition of the crosshead and the slide, but it is a little bit on the primitive side, so I've seen said about it. So it's something that you can either live with, or it's an area that if you want to try and detail these models, it is ripe for a bit of work. Other things which are worthy of attention, underneath the saddle tank there we can see some separately applied detailing showing the locomotive springs and some of the other pipework detail. And I think that really for a model that was new in the early 1990s, this really is a superb quantum leap over some of the dross that the likes of Hornby were churning out before it, and it's quite apparent why they saw the emergence of Dapol as being quite a real threat for them. After Dapol suffered a catastrophic fire at their Wrexham factory, the moulds passed to Hornby because Dapol were faced with having to raise some ready cash quite quickly. So the moulds for these, the Terrier locomotives, the N2s, and I think the Hunslet Austerities as well, were all sold to Hornby. So they've actually now been in the Hornby range far longer than they were in the Dapol one, and it's much easier to pick up Hornby examples than it is to pick up the earlier Dapol ones. But I believe that all of the parts are completely interchangeable. Running qualities can be quite varied. Firstly, we've got this motor which really is an all or nothing thing. This model doesn't do slow speed running. It's connected via a worm to this nylon gear straight to the back axle, and that's it. That's all the gear reduction there is. So it does tend to run at massively unprototypical speeds. The short wheelbase also means that it can suffer from certainly insel frog points and any little dead spots or dirt on your track. So I've tended to, in the past, I rather very unprototypically double head these things just to get a little bit of reliability. But for looking pretty, and that you can't really get any better than one of these. You can pick them up second hand for as little as £20 in full working condition, so they really are a good addition to any collection. Well, I hope that's been informative to you. Don't forget to like this video, share it too, and also subscribe to the channel. You'll be the first to know about new videos as and when we put them up. And, well, look, until next time, thanks again for watching this. And you take very good care of yourself. Bye for now.
You don't need to...
Video has been brought to you by my books, Bringing Home the Stars, Twinkle Little Star, and also you can get the complete comic collections of All Over the House, Books 1, Books 2, and also the wacky zany Life of Knob T Mouse. Thanks, and catch you later.